All right, here we go. Sean here from RPH Alley. We got Dr. Richard Harris from RPH Alley from the Men's Health Channel. Uh, Richard posted something today that I thought was awesome about protein consumption and the requirements and how much you eat. And this is something I was very attuned in, like with myself a decade ago, back when I cared about, muscle growth and trying to be as fit as possible. And then dad life happened to me where it's like, okay, well now it's like I don't even know how much protein I need based on my exercise routines. And like I don't want to put on muscle anymore. I just want to maintain. I want to like minimize that atrophy as much as I can. So when Dr. Harris posted today about protein consumption and all of that, I just wanted to dive in and get a little bit deeper on that to see if there could be some good questions here that Dr. Harris can answer for all of you guys. So let's start there. What's up, Dr. Richard Harris?
Hey, how you doing, Sean?
Awesome. All right. So first off, like how would one like myself like start to figure out how much protein I need in a day? Because I was kind of confused. At first I thought you were gonna go down the path of um lack of energy, but then I thought, oh wait a second, no, it's when you eat more protein, you end up consuming less calories in the day, which is going to help maintain or not have you gain more weight. Because like now my metabolism is a lot slower at 41 than it was at 31. So is that what you were kind of talking about today on that post?
Yeah, so first off, the notion that your metabolism slows down is not true. So your metabolism really doesn't slow down till your 60s.
Okay.
So a lot of the times, what actually slows down is other aspects of energy balance. So by energy balance, I mean, calories in, calories out, right? What do you intake? What do you expend? Most of the time, as we get older, we just don't move as much. Our step count goes down, or we're not as intentional about our exercise or our movements, and then we're less intentional about what we eat. So we tend to intake more calories and expend less calories. And we think it's our metabolism slowing down, but it's really our habits. There was a really cool study that was published, was it last year, that looked at this and showed that basically, I think it was from your metabolism starts going up when I think it's somewhere around 6 months, and then it peaks as at 18, and then it comes down a little bit from when you're a teenager, and then it stabilizes until you're like 65, right? And so that's the first thing I tell people is your metabolism is slow, your habits have changed. Let's look at those habits. And then the other thing I think people get lost on, because you hear all the time low carb, low fat, right? That's the big debate. And we're like, guys, you're forgetting the key here, and that's protein. And the study I posted was about the protein leverage hypothesis. And this is one of the really cool things. And when you see in research, so there's experimental evidence, there's animal evidence, there's randomized controlled trials, and there's observational evidence that shows that we pretty much eat to a protein level, and that protein intake is really what drives our appetite. And once you get a set amount of protein in, that's when your body will say, okay, stop eating. If everything is okay, of course there's some physiological conditions and stuff like that can change this. But this study, they did surveys, so this was a free living condition, meaning, okay, what happens in the real world? And they found that the average protein intake was 18.4% of their total calorie intake. And then they found that, well, the people who ate mostly processed foods, because these processed, ultra processed foods, and we covered that distinction in the red meat the red meat post I did with Kevin, that people who eat mostly ultra processed food eat more energy from fats and carbohydrates because these foods are lower in protein. And so the people who ate less ultra processed foods, they ate the same amount of protein, but they had way less intake of energy because they were eating less overall calories. And if you look at a lot of nutritionists and coaches, they always tell you prioritize your protein first. And if you look at the RDA for protein, it's like 0.36 grams per pound. That's not sufficient to maintain your lean muscle mass. And I've done posts and talked about this, that sarcopenia, loss of muscle mass, is a wonderful way to make yourself sick. So I'm not saying that you have to be a bodybuilder, but you should maintain enough lean muscle to be able to locomote, to be able to prevent falls, to have the the balance and coordination and things like that. We get a whole nother thing on exercise, because you have to exercise for strength, endurance, and balance, and really just to be healthy. That's the best way to do it. That's a whole nother conversation for another day. But the minimum amount of protein you should eat to maintain your lean mass is zero point 0.6 grams per pound. That's minimum. Now, optimal for me and a lot of other people will say zero point 0.8 if you're very minimally active is a good place to start. If you are active, if you're resistance training, someone like me, I'm aiming for 1 to 1.2 grams per pound of body weight. And then it can be even more than that if you're trying to maintain your mass in like a calorie deficit. So like, let's say people are athletes and they're trying to cut weight, right? Well, they're trying to lose some body fat to weigh in, but they don't want to lose your muscle before a fight, right? That would be horrendous. So they'll have an even higher protein intake. That's a higher total percentage of the protein or their calories be from protein while they're in that deficit to maintain their lean mass. So the key takeaway here is that when you structure a meal and think about what you're eating, right? Just like you think about everything else, I always say, where am I getting my protein from first? What's my protein? How much protein do I need to get in? Because for me, that's about 70 grams of protein I eat 3 meals a day per meal. Now, sometimes I'll get an extra snack in that's a high protein snack if I don't get enough protein during one of those meals. But that's the first thing I think about is protein first. Then I think about good fats. And then I think about, okay, carbohydrates after that. And I kind of layer my meals together that way.
Fascinating. I love it. Well, I love that you called out that it's not my metabolism. It's my activity level, which is totally true. Like back in those days, I mean, in addition to the workouts, like I was standing all day in a retail setting. Well, that you burn more calories obviously standing than you do sitting all day, which now I sit all day, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a great clarification. Fascinating about the protein though. So this is something that we could actually easily figure out based on your lifestyle and your activity level, right? If you're resistance training, like you said, 1 to 1.2 would be a good mark, grams per. No, did you say grams per kilogram or grams per pound?
Grams per pound.
Grams per pound. Okay.
Yeah.
So and that's 1.2 grams per pound. I love how we always do that in the US, switch over from metric to that. So, and then if you're not doing the resistance training, at a minimum, it was 0.8.
It's 0.6 to 0.8. I like to get people on that higher end of the range, just because you're less likely to overeat if you get a lot of protein and fiber, because that's just going to make you feel more full and more satiating. And there's multiple different mechanisms for that. I have a whole podcast talking about appetite, but that's generally, if I have someone who wants to change their body recomposition and we're talking about nutrition, that's the first thing I ask. Well, how much protein are you eating? How much fiber are you eating? And those are the two biggest levers when it comes to controlling appetite, and then also maintaining lean mass. I was reading something today from Peter Attia on Ozempic, right? Everybody's talking about this for weight loss, and he's saying in his clinic, what he's seen is that, yes, you can get a large weight loss with it, but he's also seeing people lose a lot of lean muscle. And that doesn't do you any good. In fact, depending on the ratio, you can actually, by percentage, make yourself have more percent body fat if you're losing lean muscle, more lean muscle than you're losing body fat. And that's probably because, number one, most people don't eat enough protein. Number two, it's a profound appetite suppressant. So now they're really not getting enough protein to maintain your lean mass. And so, yeah, the scale's going down, you're happy, but you're metabolically shooting yourself in the foot for the future.
Absolutely. And they're also causing a short supply of Ozempic for the diabetics. Because my mom was out here visiting a couple of weeks ago. She forgot it. I tried to get a transfer, called around to pharmacies. Nobody had it, right? So there you go. Well, awesome. Richard, this is amazing. I mean, short and sweet, but this is perfect. I think, like, I feel better now to where I could go and, like, okay, I'm going to start thinking about proteins first. Figure out, I mean, now comes the next trick where you got to put in the work and you have to figure out, okay, how many grams of protein does this have? How many grams of protein does this have? But at least you can have a better game plan of getting that in first, so you know exactly, you have a target to hit, and then like everything else will come down if you take care of that protein. So as far as the total energy intake, so hopefully We won't be gaining weight. We'll be maintaining or losing if we need to, depending on our goals, right? So love it, man.
Right. Yep.
Awesome. Anything else before we sign off?
No, that's it.
Awesome.
Hope you guys enjoy your Thanksgiving. I know there's going to be people consuming a lot of protein, so
Yes.
it's the perfect time to start.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Richard.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, my man.